Right, as I got the dubious honour of being the last speaker today, I better come up with something, pull something reasonably spectacular out of my bag to get everyone's attention. As luck would have it, I have something reasonably spectacular in my bag. I have India Buildings, which is arguably the best archaeological site ever excavated in Edinburgh. Arguably. I'd be interested to hear if anyone can think of a better one. It is up there with some of the best urban medieval sites in Scotland. But I'll just tell you the story so far. The site is behind the existing India Buildings. It's which has been there for donkey's years. It used to be the registry office, but it was being developed into a Virgin hotel, and which involved developing the site immediately behind it, off the Cowgate. The excavations were by AOC in 2018, 2019. And then there was the small matter of a global pandemic that got in the way. And then the specialist assessment work was done by Headland in last year. And we have just, in the last fortnight, finalised the Post-ex research design. And so it's right at the start of the whole Post-ex process. So everything I'm telling you today is basically potential and preliminary results. So here's where the site is. There's the site here. That's us just here, by the way, in that little church there. So you could practically chuck a stone and hit the site from here. It's just behind the central library along the street, off the Cowgate. Now, there has been a lot of excavation along here. This is the valley of the Grass Market at Cowgate and onto Holyrood Road up there. And there's the spine of the High Street there, the Royal Mile, down to the Palace. So a lot of development along here and a lot of excavations by various people over the last 20 years or so. And a lot of sites, and some good sites, but generally speaking, they're late medieval. Generally speaking, the finds are a bit mixed up. Everything's just rolled down from the High Street, and you're mostly getting backland sites. This site was different. And I'll tell you what we've got at this site. We've got stratigraphy. We have got good stratigraphy. 4 meters depth of it, relatively undisturbed. We were getting really big sherds of pottery. It's not been too messed about. A good strat sequence from 12th century down at the bottom through up to 19th, 20th. The bulk of the good archaeology is 12th to 16th. The 17th, 18th centuries are largely missing for some reason that we'll have to get to the bottom of. And then there's a big splurge of 19th century at the top, but we're mostly ignoring the 19th century. It's a bit mixed up and not the most interesting. So the Post-ex is going to focus on the 12th to 16th, early 17th century. Right at the bottom, there was a big thick layer of peat, and underneath that there was a deposit that had some animal bone in it. So we are going to date the animal bone and find out that is potentially prehistoric. There have been a few spots of prehistoric remains found in the Grass Market and various other places. So it's certainly going to be pre-burghal. The 12th century layers at the bottom are, it's very, very close to the date of the foundation of the borough, which was in 1130. So it's going to be interesting to see which side of the borough foundation they fall, whether it's going to be a bit earlier or a bit later. We've got waterlogged. We've got a lot of waterlogged. That's a medieval, oh, Jesus, wrong button, excuse me. That's a timber, a big structural timber. That is a wattlework fence. We've got structure. We've also got barrels. We've got lots and lots of organic finds. Huge amounts of waterlogged stuff. We can look at the wooden construction techniques. We can compare that to Perth High Street and other Perth sites and sites in England. It's probably the best organic construction ever found in Edinburgh. We also, dating, we have got 91 potential dendro samples. 91! And we're going to run them all. And when you put them all together, it has the potential to if they all join up, we get the background tree ring sequence for Southeast Scotland, which at the moment doesn't exist. If you run dendro dates in Southeast Scotland, there's a fair chance they'll fail unless they are from imported timber, which, to be fair, quite a lot of wood in Edinburgh was imported, but potentially we could build up the tree ring sequence for Southeast Scotland, which greatly increases the chance of future dendro dates in the area working. So it's potentially a game changer for dendro in the area. We've got, to all intents and purposes, infinite C14 samples. There's so much stuff came up. We're going to run 100 dates. The dating is going to be a combination of the dendro, the C14, huge amounts of pot and fines dating, and the good stratigraphic analysis, and we're going to do Bayesian analysis as well. So the precision in the dating that we should be able to get for the stratigraphic sequence is going to be unprecedented. Organic, so many organic finds. This is our star organic find. That's a leather costrel, a water bottle, a barrel-shaped costrel, and it's rather beautiful. There's a handful of these known from elsewhere in Britain, none from Scotland. There's two shield-shaped cartouches on the front there, which we couldn't find any evidence of decoration on them, or stitch holes or rivet holes where something might have been attached to them, but presumably they had some sort of armorial design on them. And we also there were 100 shoes, there were 5 knife sheaths, including one that had embossed decoration on it. Loads of textile fragments. We've got wooden bowls, wooden combs. And the beautiful finds. This amber bead is in such good condition that I'm still not convinced it's not modern plastic. But we'll look into it, obviously, in more detail in post-ex. But it is from a 15th or 16th century deposit, which means it's very unlikely to be plastic unless it's intrusive. But it's lovely. It's got this unusual shape in section with the thickening around the perforation. It's a very, very lovely thing. This whetstone is absolutely, where's my pointer? Absolutely exquisite. It's the kind of whetstone that would have hung from a belt. And it's so beautifully made. It doesn't look like it's been used at all, but it has, it's recessed around the end there and with a perforation in it. So it looks like it had a metal fixing at the top to hang from a belt. It's a beautiful thing. And this, quite possibly my favourite find, this is a small pipe clay figurine it's about this big, of the Virgin and Child. And it has been damaged at the bottom there, and the head is missing at the top. But not only Mary's head, the baby's head is also lopped off. Now, that damage there and that there, that could well be accidental, but the fact that the baby's head's gone as well, it could be accidental, but it's less likely. It's also entirely possible they were deliberately defaced. It's from a 15th or 16th century context. If we can get that dating down and tie it to the mid-16th century, then that is the Scottish Reformation right there, encapsulated in one find. It's very beautiful. I love that find. I don't have any cool pictures of the metalwork, sorry, because it's all at the conservators at the moment. The metalwork was actually the one area that was slightly disappointing. I was recording it last, and I was expecting great things of it, but the non-ferrous in particular was a bit lacking. I was expecting buckles and brooches and all sorts, but anyway, we did have 30 coins, which is not bad. This is just the medieval, early post-med coins. We had a stack load of 19th century ones as well, but 30 coins. They were all late medieval, early post-med coppers. We didn't have any of the earlier medieval silver coins, which is odd in itself because we did have a good, decent chunk of 12th, 13th century deposits, but no silverware. So that's going to be an interesting one to try and tease apart, presumably some sort of socio-economic reasons for that. There was a folding balance, or the M-shaped mount, that was beautiful. A little silver mount in the shape of a Gothic M, which presumably attached to a strap or a bit of horse harness or something. The ironwork, the tongs, pincers, we took builder's trowel. They don't sound particularly exciting, but they were complete, all of them. And so it's really unusual to get tools that complete, all from medieval context. Horseshoes as well. The prick spurs are relatively unusual. They're relatively early. Most medieval spurs you find are rowel spurs. It's spurs. It's really nice to get a prick spur. And then padlocks and keys and all sorts. I don't think I've ever, in my entire archaeological career, come across a shell on site that I would call remarkable. And at this site, we've got two of them. The one on the left, sorry, I can't tell my left from my right. The one on the left is a perforated scallop shell, which is a symbol of pilgrimage from Santiago de Compostela in Spain. You went on pilgrimage, and then you find them on the beach at Santiago, so you got your scallop shell, and then put holes in it, pinned it to your bag or to your cloak, and then wore that as a symbol of pilgrimage on the way home. And which means someone in 13th century Edinburgh went on pilgrimage to Spain, which is very cool. The relatively, I think there's one other I know of from Scotland which was buried with its owner on the Isle of May. This one was just found in a ditch with some rubbish. So it's going to be interesting to try and work out why something that was clearly of such importance to its owner would have ended up being thrown out with the rubbish. But someone did mention that there was a thing about depositing them in watery places, and so I'm going to have to investigate that in more detail, see if that might have been a factor. The one on the right is even more exotic. That is a money cowrie. It's quite small. The picture makes it look big. It's about this big. They are native to the tropical waters of the Indian and Pacific Ocean, and they were also used as currency in late medieval Africa. So that's quite possibly our most exotic find. How exactly it ended up in Edinburgh, that's going to be an interesting one to try and fathom. And we've got loads of pottery, over 12,000 sherds. This is just the medieval stuff. I'm not even getting into the 19th century stuff. 222 kilos. And some big context assemblages, big joining sherds, two near complete vessels. This one, which I love this part, it's beautiful, it's about this big. Most medieval jugs are about this big. This one, it's tiny. It's very, very sweet, and it's nearly complete, and absolutely no use whatsoever. What would you put in a jug that size, really? Anything that you want that was precious enough to put in a jug that size, you would want to put in a container much nicer than that. So, yeah, answers on a postcard for that one. The one on the right is a straight-sided cooking pot, which is a very early form of cooking pot, so quite possibly 12th century. And again, near complete. There's going to be more near complete vessels as well, or at least complete vessel profiles when I stick all the sherds together as well. The fact that we've got early pottery and good associated dating evidence is also of interest, because at the moment the inception date for the Scottish medieval pottery industry is the second quarter of the 12th century, and that is based on a 40-year-old excavation in Kelso. No one has come up with convincing dating to push it back at all, or to adjust that in any way, or confirm or deny it. So, but at this site, we have got early pottery, we've got good dating. It's going to be interesting to see if that date still holds. We also have some other unusual vessels. We've got dripping dishes, we've got lamps, candlesticks. There is a possible puzzle jug. It's a strap handle that's hollow. I have never seen the like before. The only thing I can think of that is it's from a puzzle jug, which is it's a kind of medieval fun jug where you put the liquid in, but it doesn't pour out from where you think it's going to pour out from, with hilarious consequences. So it's a very lovely thing. We are going to do ICP MS analysis on the pottery, on some of the local stuff and some of the imported stuff, to try and work out where it's from and identify some trade routes and supply lines for pottery in Edinburgh. And we're going to do ORA analysis on some of the pottery as well, to try and work out what it was used for. Look for those residues. So much animal bone. If you go down to Headland offices at all in the next few months, you will see it everywhere. There's not room for it in our store downstairs, so it's squirreled away in boxes all over the office. 228 boxes of animal bone, nearly 800 kilos of it. So lots of the usual cattle, sheep, pigs. The site is just off the Cowgate, which obviously gets its name from, that's where they brought the cattle in to market. And there does seem to be a lot of industry surrounding the cows on site. So we've got butchery happening, and we'll be able to look at animal husbandry methods, preferred cuts of meat, that sort of thing. It's going to be interesting to see whether the butchery is on an industrial scale or a domestic scale as well, to see what was going on there. We're going to do isotope analysis on the domesticates' bones to see where they were coming from. So were they raised in town? Were they raised in the rural hinterland around Edinburgh? Were they being brought in from further afield, cattle from the Highlands, for example? So that's going to be interesting. We also have a deposit that's the cat's graveyard. There were several cats found in this one small deposit. So we need to investigate that in more detail. Was it just where cats went to die, or were they skinning them and using the fur? We've got a seal bone. Seal bones are really unusual in urban medieval Scottish deposits, even though seals obviously were common. You'd find them out in the Forth. But so what were they using the seals for? Were they eating them? Were they using the skin? Using the oil? And we have a rabbit bone. Surprisingly, no one knows when rabbits were introduced to the Scottish mainland. There is a record for them on Mull in 1549, noting that Mull was overrun with rabbits, but the date of when they were introduced or when they became common on the mainland is a bit of an unknown, and no one's done any direct dating evidence. So we're going to date this rabbit bone, and it is potentially going to be the earliest dated rabbit in Scotland. And lots of industries. The main one is tanning. We've got lots of features which appear to relate to tanning. That's a tanning pit there in the top. We've got wooden lime tanks, stone lime tanks. We've got lime deposits that seem to relate to tanning. And we have lots and lots of leather working, but the leather working all appears to relate to leather working, secondary leather working, not to tanning, as opposed to CFA's site at Hollywood North along the way, which has tanning features and lots of leather tanning waste. So it's an interesting dichotomy here at India Buildings, where it's leather working waste, but tanning features. So we need to unpick that and try and work out what's going on. There's also lots of cattle horn cores that we found. Huge amounts of cattle horn cores. So presumably they were also horn working, which obviously would tie in with the leather working and the butchery. It's just general cow-related industries. We've got evidence of metalworking. We don't have any in situ metalworking furnaces, but we've got iron slag, scrap iron. We've got the tongs and metal punches. There's a big load of copper sheet offcuts, which implies there were also non-ferrous metalworking as well. And we have these stone discs, a whole series of these really crude stone discs, which I haven't quite got to the bottom of yet. But various sizes, from this to this, made in various kinds of local stone, just crudely made, roughly chipped around the edge. Only one of them is perforated. That one down the bottom there has got a perforation in the middle. So were they pot lids? Were they spindle whorl rough outs? Were they rough outs in general for something or other and hadn't been finished off yet? Or did they have some kind of industrial use that you didn't need to finish them off for? Haven't got to the bottom of that one yet. Just a weird collection. We need to work out the distribution of them and see how they compare to all the other industries. So we can plot where all of these things are happening and then try and work out how the industries relate to each other over time. And lots of environmental evidence. So we've got shellfish, we've got lots of plant remains. We have flax, which is cool, obviously, for making linen. Relatively unusual to find that, actually surprising. We've got hemp, which I'm sure they were using it purely to make ropes out of. We've got walnuts and figs, which is nice. We're going to do analysis on insect remains and look for parasite remains as well. The parasite guy is very excited. He's very into his parasites, but yes, apparently you can tell a lot from parasites. So you can even look at trade routes where you can find parasites, similar parasites in different towns. So that's going to be interesting. We're doing micromorphological analysis of the sediments as well and looking at pollen. So we have got we've got 3 bits of really big stone shot. The biggest one, it's about this big. It's flipping enormous. 13-inch big stone ball. It weighs 47 kilos. And manoeuvring that onto the scales to work out that number was an interesting day in the office. It involved a very big bloke. So the big ball was, in its preliminary interpretation on site, was a trebuchet stone, which it could be, but if it is, it's residual because it was from a 15th century deposit. So there was a theory that it could relate to Edward I's attack in 1296, but it's too late for that. We're going to have to work out how these bits of shot work and also how they compare to early guns of the 15th century as well. they were all found around the around the town ditch. So they could either be defensive shot or they could be shot from attacking forces. We also have an episode of destruction by fire at the end of a 12th or 13th century phase. So if we could tie that into the attack by Edward I, that would be great, if we could get the dating down. Obviously, even if it does turn out to be late 13th century, we can't say for definite that it's Edward I, because obviously destruction by fire is a very common thing in a medieval wooden town, but it would be good circumstantial evidence. We're going to see if we can spot find any evidence for the Earl of Hertford's visits in the mid-16th century as well. And we have a strange skull. It's a bit the worse for wear now, as you can see. These two bits appear to be part of the same skull. We had a couple of other bits as well from it. It was potentially complete when it was deposited, but it was found down a well. What was it doing down a well? It's possible that it was charnel from a local graveyard, from Greyfriars Kirk, for example. But this is a period where people keep skulls on their desk as memento mori. It's quite possible that something odd happened. We're going to throw everything we can think of at the skull. We can do isotope. He's got a couple of teeth left, so we're going to do isotope analysis on those, see if he was local or from further afield, and we're going to C14 date it to see if it was old when it was deposited in the well, and try and work out what his story was. That's about it. Watch this space. It's the beginning of a 3-year program of Post-ex, where it's going to be a monograph eventually, which will be out in 2026, we hope. I'm at a stage in my career I don't often get excited about archaeology, but I am excited about this site. There's so much potential there, and it could the precision in dating, when compared to the finds in the pottery and everything else in it, means that it could help refine and define those typologies and help future sites and future medieval archaeology in Scotland, and generally tighten everything up. And it's just incredibly exciting. Ask me back in 2 or 3 years' time, and I'll tell you what we found, because it's just the start.